historian presents the Battle of Austerlitz, Napoleon's Masterclass. December 2nd, 1805. On a cold, misty morning, two armies stand opposite each other across a 7-mile battlefield. On one side, the Austro-Russian army. On the other, the French army of Napoleon Bonaparte. What follows is a thunderclap that will forever change history, forge the legend of perhaps the greatest military commander of all time, shake the foundations of Europe, and ignite a series of wars that would define an era. Napoleon's meteoric rise to power was as stunning as it was improbable. A lowly artillery captain from the tiny island of Corsica to Emperor of France in little more than 10 years. Political savvy and a string of brilliant military campaigns from Europe to North Africa had paved his path to the throne. So, after the coup of Brumaire in 1799, there was only one step left to take. On December 2nd, 1804, in the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself Emperor of the French.
Crowning yourself may seem like a pretty egotistical move, but it's actually a very choreographed message. And the message Napoleon is sending is that I'm not wearing this crown simply because I was born. I'm wearing this crown because I've earned it through merit, and I've earned it the hard way.
But while this was a joyous day for the new French Empire, storm clouds were once again brewing over Europe. Napoleon's 10-year reign would see some of the greatest clashes in military history, political upheaval, and Europe changed forever. After Britain declared war on France and its new Spanish ally in 1803, Napoleon was resolved to rid himself of his arch-rival. Assembling an impressive army along the coast of the English Channel, 180,000 strong. But while the Royal Navy ruled the waves, any chance of invasion was impossible. By contrast, Britain was in no position to challenge Napoleon on land. Equally determined to eliminate a mortal adversary, British Prime Minister William Pitt, through diplomacy, gold, and espionage, appealed to Europe's most powerful monarchs to join what would become the Third Coalition. They were wary of Napoleon's rise to power and were equally fearful of the revolutionary ideals that still burned bright across France.
Just because Great Britain can't go blow for blow with Napoleon on land does not mean it lacks other options. Between 1805 and 1815, they send the modern-day equivalent of nearly $1 trillion in the form of direct payments and supplies to their allies. That's money, ships, uniforms, weapons, gunpowder. You name it, they send it.
The final public spark came when Napoleon also crowned himself King of Italy. Austria was outraged, having seen its territory in Italy and Germany steadily rolled back by French forces. They now formally joined Britain, Russia, Sweden, and Naples in declaring war. The Allies planned a full-scale invasion, with a combined Austro-Russian army making the main thrust towards the River Rhine and into the heart of France. But through his elaborate spy network, Napoleon quickly discovered the plot. With typical decisiveness, he issued a flurry of orders to his commanders. His army, now renamed La Grande Armée, immediately began marching at speed towards the Rhine. The Napoleonic Wars had begun. Napoleon quickly moved to engage the Allies before they could combine their armies.
Speed is life. Nobody embraces this more than Napoleon. He takes 180,000 men that are currently facing England, and in almost an instant, he's got them out of their camps and on the move, and they make it to the Rhine in 3 weeks.
His first prey was the Austrian army of General Mark, who had begun his advance too soon and was now dangerously isolated in Bavaria. Seizing the moment, Napoleon ordered Marshal Murat, his fearless cavalry commander, to advance through the Black Forest, providing a cavalry screen that would blind the Austrians to French movements. The rest of his corps, still advancing at tremendous speed across the Rhine, now swung south to envelop Mark's troops. Mark was completely unaware of the storm about to engulf him. Not only was he being encircled,
Fixes, bayonet!
He would soon be surrounded by the most highly trained, motivated, and well-led army in the world. La Grande Armée would be unlike anything Europe had ever seen. It was now reorganized into the corps system, inspired by ancient Roman legions. It was a system Napoleon now made his own. It was so revolutionary, it was eventually adopted by every European army and was still in practice until 1945. Each corps was a smaller army between 20,000 to 40,000 soldiers and commanded by one of Napoleon's marshals or senior generals. Complete with its own infantry, artillery, cavalry, reconnaissance, medical, engineering, and support units, each corps could now march and fight independently, while still operating as part of a larger, coordinated force. This gave Napoleon extraordinary operational flexibility. He could seamlessly swap his vanguard and rearguard, shift the army's axis of movement, or pivot the entire force 90 degrees on a moment's notice. To maintain speed and mobility, Napoleon's corps relied on foraging parties to gather supplies from local villages and the surrounding countryside, eliminating the need for slow, vulnerable supply trains. This system allowed his forces to move with remarkable agility, keeping his enemies off balance and uncertain of his true intentions until the final moment. Once an enemy army was located, a single corps would engage and fix it in place, while the remaining corps rapidly converged to deliver a decisive, concentrated blow at its weakest point or even envelop it. This ability to swiftly unleash concentration of force at the precise moment became a hallmark of Napoleon's battlefield dominance. For General Mark, it was too late. The noose fully tightened as the French corps stormed across the Danube and swept in behind him. Mark tried in vain to break out, but it was no use. To make matters worse, his hopes for reinforcement quickly evaporated. The Russian army was still over 160 miles away and exhausted from their long march. Now, only 6 weeks into the war, Mark surrendered his entire army to Napoleon at the town of Ulm. The French took tens of thousands of Austrian prisoners, all without a single major battle. After word reached General Mikhail Kutuzov of the Austrian defeat, the Russian army immediately halted its advance. His men, tired, hungry, and 900 miles from home, were in no shape to face Napoleon alone, and he ordered an immediate retreat. Napoleon gave chase. A far more experienced commander than Mark, Kutuzov had been called out of retirement by Tsar Alexander to lead the Russian army. He fought several skillful delaying actions, but the French advance was relentless. On October 12th, the Austrian capital of Vienna fell to Napoleon. But to Napoleon's fury, Kutuzov was able to fall back to Olmütz in today's Czech Republic, linking up with Tsar Alexander and Emperor Francis of Austria. By now, it was late November. Napoleon's army was deep in enemy territory and exhausted from constant marching and fighting. With winter closing in, he needed to force a decisive outcome quickly. Wary of Napoleon, Kutuzov advised retreating further. But to the French Emperor's great fortune, he was overridden by Tsar Alexander and his arrogant advisors. The young Tsar coveted a glorious victory for himself. And on October 25th, he ordered the Allied army to break camp. Buoyed by clever false intelligence that French morale was low, the overeager Alexander was playing right into Napoleon's hands. After receiving reports of the Allied movements, Napoleon ordered his corps to rapidly converge on a battlefield he had carefully chosen near the town of Austerlitz. The tallest hill in the area was the Platzen Heights, an easily defensible position with a commanding view of the surrounding area. But Napoleon wasn't looking for a quick victory. He was planning for an annihilation that would end the war. If I attack them first, they'll have the numbers. And there'll be no chance of surprise. So instead, I hold the heights. But they'll just surround it and starve us out. But what if I abandon it? They'll see it as weakness and charge straight for us. Alexander gets his battle, I get total victory. As the Allied army neared Austerlitz, Napoleon ordered a withdrawal to the valley below, giving further impression the French were withdrawing. The overconfident Russian high command took the bait. After scouting the area on horseback, Napoleon drew up plans and issued orders late into the night. Then he dozed a few hours amongst his soldiers. He knew all too well that dawn would bring the first anniversary of his coronation as emperor, and with it, a battle that would decide if he would see a second. The morning of December 2nd, 1805, was cold and sunny, with a heavy fog shrouding the area. The two armies, nearly equal in size, readied themselves for battle. The Allies had occupied the Platzen Heights the night before and were still convinced they faced a weakened and retreating French army. Third Corps, under Marshal Davout, was still strung out on the march, leaving the French right flank severely stretched. Expecting an easy victory, the Allies decided on a full-out assault from the Platz and Heights to smash the French right wing before swinging north to roll up Napoleon's army. Little did they know, this was precisely what Napoleon was counting on. With the Allied forces overcommitted, he would then unleash his own attack directly at the Austro-Russian centre, splitting it in two. But his plan is as daring as it is brilliant. It relied on his prediction of the Allied plan, the arrival of Davout's Third Corps on his right, and a perfectly timed counterattack from Marshal Soult's Fourth Corps.
Napoleon's plan is absolutely brilliant, but it's also risky as hell. If Third Corps and Davout don't get there in time, he's screwed. If the Allies don't take the bait and stay up on the Pratzen Heights, he's screwed. And if he doesn't time his counterattack right, he's screwed. But he's got complete faith in his plan, he knows his enemy, and pound for pound, this is the finest army in the world.
Just after 7 a.m., Austrian troops of General Kienmeyer's advance guard moved forward into the fog-shrouded valley and attacked French troops defending the village of Telnitz. Severely outnumbered, the French put up a heroic effort, but were steadily forced back. This was exactly what the Allies had hoped for. But instead of launching their main attack, they hesitated. The morning mist was still obscuring the main French army from view, and the Allied orders given the night before were so poorly written they caused confusion and delay.
Imagine being an Austrian officer the morning of the battle. Your orders show up, but they're written in Russian. And then the Russian officer gets his orders, but they're written in German. So you got these guys running around trying to get this stuff translated. So it takes them a little while to fully get rolling.
But within an hour, the first three Allied columns began advancing towards the French right wing. Soon after, savage fighting engulfed Sokolnitz village and castle. Marshal Davout, whose corps had just force-marched a staggering 70 miles in 2 days, began arriving to strengthen the French right wing. Just before 9 a.m., his lead infantry brigades advanced through the mist and helped stabilize the French line. 2 more brigades arrived just in time to reinforce French troops at Sokolnitz. Napoleon now saw that, as he'd planned, the Allied columns were streaming down the Platzen Heights. With the fog still thick in the valley, his moment had come. Standing at Napoleon's side, Marshal Soult, commander of Fourth Corps, was ordered to unleash his counterattack. To the horror of Allied commanders, 2 elite French infantry divisions burst into the sunlight through the mist and advanced straight towards the Allied centre. General Kutuzov was forced to quickly organise a defence, throwing his only nearby troops of 4 column towards the French. Ferocious fighting raged for the next 2 hours. Musket fire was so intense that the Austro-Russian troops could not withstand the onslaught, and was soon overwhelmed by a fierce bayonet charge. By 11 a.m., the Allied troops could hold no longer. The French were now driving a deep wedge into the Allied centre. But to the north, fighting now erupted on Napoleon's left flank with an epic clash of cavalry. While the storm of sabres and horses raged, Russian General Prince Bagration's advance guard moved forward and captured the village of Austerlitz, but was quickly driven back by withering cannon fire from the Santon Hill. Devastating charge of French cuirassiers finally drove back the Allies and opened a lane for Marshal Lannes's 5th Corps to push forward into Blasowitz and Krug. Desperate to save the situation and regain the Platzen Heights, Grand Duke Constantine led forward the final reserve, the Russian Imperial Guard. An entire battalion of French 4th Line infantry was overrun by Russian Guard cavalry, losing their prized Eagle standard after bitter fighting. Napoleon, who was now on the heights, unleashed his own Guard cavalry. The elite French horsemen slammed into the Russians, who were now disorganized from their charge. The French again threw the Russians back. The last of the Allied centre was shattered. Napoleon now moved to close his final trap on the Allied left wing, still locked in heavy fighting around Sokolnitz. At 2 p.m, he ordered 4 divisions and the Imperial Guard to sweep south. General Buxhovden, commander of the Allied left, only now saw the French troops closing in from his rear. Blasted from 3 sides and with casualties mounting, he was forced to order an immediate retreat south. Desperate to escape, many of his men tried to flee across frozen ponds. Napoleon ordered the French artillery to open fire.
Fire! Fire!
Smashing the already brittle ice. As cannonballs crashed around them, over 200 men and dozens of horses were drowned in the frigid water. The battle was over. Dead and wounded littered the ground, many of whom were tragically left abandoned for several days. Despite Napoleon's deep concern for the care of the wounded, the scale of the carnage was too great for French and Allied medical corps to cope. The young French emperor had won a stunning victory. His army had captured 45 enemy standards and took over 10,000 additional prisoners.
It's an incredibly lopsided victory for Napoleon. The French suffer somewhere around 8,000 casualties at Austerlitz, but the Austro-Russians suffer around 27,000. That's over a third of the men that they put in the field that day.
Russian forces retreated, leaving Emperor Francis of Austria to his fate. he was forced to accept a humiliating settlement with France, agreeing to pay a crushing sum of 40 million francs and ceding even more territory in exchange for peace. With the Third Coalition crushed, Napoleon emerged as the most powerful man in Europe, strengthening his confederation of German allies and toppling the King of Naples. But not all was lost for the Allies. At the same time as Austerlitz, news arrived of a disastrous Franco-Spanish naval defeat off Cape Trafalgar. Masterminded by British Admiral Lord Nelson, the French Navy was utterly destroyed. Nelson did not survive the battle, but his victory was so crushing. It ensured the Royal Navy would remain virtually unchallenged for over a century. Britannia, ruler of the waves. Napoleon, master of the mainland. The two great powers unable to challenge the other. When William Pitt received news of Napoleon's victory at Austerlitz, he's reported to have said, "Roll up that map of Europe. It will not be wanted these 10 years." Pitt's ominous warning would eventually prove true. Austerlitz was the first major battle of the Napoleonic Wars, but it would not be the last. Napoleon would soon face more enemies, more challenges, and some of the most terrifying battles Europe would ever see. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, we encourage you to unleash your own cavalry charge on the fabled like button. And if you would like to support the channel, please check out our Patreon for Imperial level perks. You'll find the link in the description below. And as always, this is your epic historian, so please do let us know in the comments what you would like to see next.